This is Alexandra from PersEd.
And this is Paul from the Time Repair Corporation.
And we both welcome you to our monthly Interchange.
A meeting of the minds, people reaching outside of themselves in an attempt to reach a deeper understanding of their different perspectives.
And it is through this coming together of perspectives that we wish to serve and inspire the divergent, the polymaths, the non-conforming thinkers, people who cannot be put into molds. In short, the people we like to call angels of chaos.
We want to achieve that by inviting these troublemakers from around the world and digging into their experiences and their unique views.
Views which we want to bring forth and support with models for personal, global, and sustainable change to design a future that is fit for this world. But there's also something additional.
We want to grow that conversation for more people to be able to weigh in and contribute to the practical creation of tomorrow. So reach out to us and let's make this a borderless interchange.
And on our podcast today, we have a very special person from the Netherlands, originally from the Philippines, who carries at least a dozen virtual hats. You don't see them now when you look at her, but they're there. Trust me, they're there. And perhaps you will be able to remove some hats and discover what's inside of them during the podcast today. So a bit about Lana Jelenjev, Lana Christine Jelenjev. She calls herself a community alchemist. And I think that is self-explanatory. But what I'd like to add is that she understands what communities stand for and how they function. And she designs experiences that catalyzes connection. She is the founder of far too many organizations to count here. Perhaps some of them will go with the flow of the conversation later on. And she is very much involved in designing learning experience, in instigating neurodiversity in school settings, and in putting the 4 Ps, people, purpose, profit, and planet, at the core of the work that she and the organizations she works with, the core of what they have and what they do. She's previously worked with IDOU, the famous San Francisco-based hub for creativity and problem solving. The least we can say is that Lana is a true complex polymath that cannot be presented as just a few words. But I think you will come to discover that very quickly today on our podcast. Lana, I welcome you, and Paul also welcomes you. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm actually very much curious as to how the conversations would unfold. So thank you for having me here.
Our pleasure.
I think we're curious too. We have no idea how this conversation is going to unfold. There's a plan usually, but then some things happen, discussions occur. There's a chemistry, there's an alchemy in the process that we don't understand unless we go through the process and take it forward. The first thing that I personally want to ask you, because of PersEd's work and my work in education, and the fact that you have so much experience in the field of education, what does transformative education mean to you? What is it?
Well, for me, transformative education is when we can truly serve the needs of our students in such a way that they thrive in the educational setting and not just survive in an educational setting. I remember when I was doing a certification program on gifted education, and I was introduced to differentiated instruction. So mainly providing different avenues for students, for gifted students to make use of their gifts and to excel and to be able to thrive in a school setting. And I'm like, why can't we not provide this in a regular setting? Why do only gifted students have differentiated instruction? And why is this not a norm in a regular school setting? So that for me really made me question, like, there are some limitations to the curriculum, to the educational system, and that is something that we need to also address. How we can shift from these traditional models of teaching to, I would say, what is the new way of teaching, especially this generation nowadays. They have information at their fingertips. With a click of a button, with even asking Alexa in the Siri, they would know information already. So for me, transformational education is when we meet the needs of students and also meet the needs of the time, because we cannot use old models of teaching to new ways of doing things.
That's really valuable.
Yeah, and what would the outcome of a transformative education be on individuals, children, lifelong learners?
I would say that the outcome would be children who are self-full. So I've adopted this terminology, and I really embraced this idea of self-fullness for quite some time now. And this came in with this complexity of, when we give too much, people say, we're so selfless. When we try not to give too much, people say, well, we're selfish. So for me, I saw that and experienced it for myself when I got sick, when I got diagnosed with breast cancer, and I started putting boundaries and started saying no to things and started really feeling into my needs, checking in with myself. Believe me, I didn't even know about checking in with myself up until the age of 37 when I was ill. And I remember it very vividly in my head. My husband was called to go to work. Normally after chemotherapy, he would stay with me, but he was called to work. And so he went to work. And I was so frustrated because I was not getting any messages from him. And I'm like, how come he's not even, saying, how am I doing? And then he just dropped on me. I'm like, Lana, seriously, you're 37 and you're still waiting for somebody else to ask you how you're doing. So why don't you check in with yourself? And I was just like, oh yeah, I can do that for myself. So what I did as an experiment was I put on an alarm at 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. And that alarm has just a, how are you? So when I hear that alarm, it gives me a minute to reflect and ask myself, Lana, how are you? So checking in with my feelings, how I'm doing. So these are life skills that I'm like, why are we not teaching this to children? I started teaching that when I also practiced it for myself. I started teaching that at that time. My kids were 5 and 7. So you can see how proud I am when my 5-year-old son came from home, and it's just out of the blue with it like, Mama, check-in moment, how are you? And I was just like, how crucial that language is and that skill. And he was like, Mama, every time I go back from school, I'm gonna check in with you. He did. Yeah. He still does that up until this day. I have kids who knows how to ask, are you available, before saying, or talking about things. That's a part of what I've learned. And like, we're just so used to dumping our ideas, our thoughts on other people without asking if they're available to receive them. But these are life skills that I've learned throughout the process, and this is what I consider to be a space of self-fullness. So if I am self-full, I know my boundaries, I know how I'm feeling, I know how I'm using my energy, my time, my resources. I know where my yeses and my nos are coming from. I know who I am. And this is what I'd want to see for children, that they become children who are self-full, not adults who are self-full, but children already who are self-full. And to be able to do that, we need to have an environment that encourage that self-fullness in them.
It's really, really valuable for for specifically community. Just this idea, not only for the future community that will be built by these children as they grow up, but for the immediate community, to be able to provide that kind of interaction and interconnection. I think that that's sort of at the core of what has been, to a degree, lost over the past few decades, as we have moved not just into cities, post-industrial revolution and post-war, but as we have adapted to new technologies and to new media, we have been isolating ourselves more and more and breaking down a lot of traditional community street corner elements where you just knew people in your neighborhood. And this might be perhaps a perfect way to start reclaiming that at the family level, at the school level. And I think that the schools are sort of central to any community we've got.
Oh, definitely.
There are connections to one another.